Okay. All right, good afternoon, members of council, administration. Welcome to our electronic meeting for our policies and priorities committee meeting. And I would like to call our meeting to order. And to the members, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this afternoon. I see none, so we'll have that reflected in our minutes. There are no delegations at this meeting. And we have no communication items to be presented. And so first we'll go right into reports, members of council, and we do have a report for the Urban Hands Licensing Pilot Program interim update. And so I believe our clerk is going to bring this report forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Christina Hebert is also with us this evening, who helped author the report and helps to oversees the program as well. So I believe there she is.
Hey, good afternoon, Christina.
Good afternoon.
So members, this report, basically, as council is aware, we brought a report to council in 2019 outlining a proposed 2-year pilot program. We had public information centers on the proposed pilot program, which were summarized in a report that went to council in December of 2010 or 2019. The pilot program was ultimately approved by council at their meeting in January and was set to commence March 1st and was to extending to April 30th of 2022. So in accordance with the pilot program terms and conditions, there was a bylaw passed by council at their February meeting to adopt those terms and conditions, which essentially establishes a limit of 6 female hens for properties under 10,000 square feet, or for properties with more than 10,000 square feet, an additional per additional 3,000 square feet up to a maximum of 12 hens. So any owner who is desirous of keeping urban hens needs to complete a pilot program registration form, meet eligibility requirements, and submit an annual license fee of $25. There's a site inspection that is conducted to ensure that the coop and hen run are built in accordance with the terms and conditions, and they are also required to complete a registration form before a license is issued, and the hens are issued identification bands. So this purpose of this report is just to provide an interim report on the pilot program, given we've had just about 1 year experience with it. So the program was launched March 1st of 2020. And since that time, we've issued 11 permits, and we've allowed for the keeping in total of 66 urban hens. So we have received some complaints with regards to the properties, which we'll discuss later on in this report. But recently we did have one complaint in particular that resulted in the license being withdrawn. And fortunately, the property owner being cooperative with removing the hens and the coop as requested. So we have been monitoring the pilot program since its inception, and based on some of our experience, this report essentially outlines some amendments or recommends some amendments to the pilot program to provide for greater enforcement of the terms and conditions and the requirements set out in the terms and conditions. So as an example, fortunately, as I mentioned, the one owner who was not fully in compliance within the terms and conditions was cooperative in removing the hens and rehoming them, as well as removing the coop. If for some reason we have a similar situation, which we are currently working on as we speak, we just want to ensure that we have greater authority to be able to remove those hens and to issue orders to comply, and failure to do so being able to a failure by the owner to do so, the town being able to go in, remove the hens and the coop. and to recover any costs that are incurred from that particular licensee or homeowner or property owner. So we did set out some of the complaints that we have received, some of them with regards to the program, anything from odor to, hens that have escaped, et cetera. And we've just summarized those here in this report. So we are recommending to council the changes that are appended to both the terms and the bylaw to be adopted at the next regular council meeting. And that should the town have to go in and remove hens or the hen coops for failure of a licensed owner doing so, the administration has the authority to properly go in and remove it and to recover those costs from a particular property owner. And happy to answer any questions that council may have at this time.
Ms. Moy, just the only question that I have is that in the complaints you have received, would they be classified as minor complaints outside of the one where obviously the removal of the hens and the coop and so forth? But why I'm asking is that I don't know if other members of council have received calls or anything, but I have not received one in the year itself. So would you classify them just minor and then they were addressed by our inspectors?
Our inspector's been very good to go out and inspect and has documented the concerns with regards to, as I mentioned, the one that did cooperate in removing the hens. This current situation that we're managing as well, he did go out and take a look at it. Relative to these concerns, mostly is the rodents, unfortunately, getting into the coops and utilizing or taking advantage of the feed and the shelter. But most of the other complaints, odor or hens at large, the property owners have been very responsive to address the situation, or in some cases had already addressed the situation by the time we received the complaint.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Dowie and Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. I can confirm having received a number of complaints, specifically universally involving rodents in the vicinity of coops. And that have involved chickens running astray. I think it's a matter of the adherence to the rules that are set are not being followed by some of the licensees. So I'm very much looking forward to the improved enforcement that's being called for the remainder of the pilot project. Because as it stands now, the severity and the concern that's being expressed to me by the residents of Ward 1 who live near the coops is really all that the sky has fallen, and I'm not saying it that mildly. It's that it was more of an I told you so, that we said rodents would come in and gave us your assurance that they wouldn't if things were done properly, and sure enough, rodents are part and parcel of a couple of these circumstances. I am seeing the City of Toronto is also going through a pilot project at the moment, and they are not reporting the same rodent concerns or noise concerns for that matter. So I guess I'd like to, we gave it 2 years. We still have a year to go, and I think it's worthwhile to conclude the pilot project, but I certainly hope to see something different for the next year. So that residents aren't being faced with having to deal with rodents on a permanent basis because someone is not following the rules that are set out with this program.
All right, thank you, Councillor Dowie. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Council administration. I think Councillor Dowie has actually said the exact points that I wanted to emphasize. Myself, I've not received any phone calls on the issue. I've received, certainly some correspondence that's been shared by all. This was a bit of a concern that I know was brought forth when the pilot program was initially being considered of rodents and rats kind of coming into the scene. And it certainly is evident that that's the case. So I share the exact sentiments with Councillor Dowie, and certainly enforcement on that. Those critters do pose a significant health risk to our residents. And it's absolutely critical that those individuals that are overseeing these coops, make sure that they're tending to them and watch over them, because we want the best for the health for everyone here. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilor Jobin.
More just comments. I'm aware of some people in the urban area that have been successful with their chicken in their coops. I would have to say that our administration has done quite well. And if they've already removed a couple that are not in compliance, I feel like the project has been a success. I mean, we've given people an opportunity. They aren't in compliance, and now those are gone. So it's just like anything else. We're going to punish the ones who are doing good because some aren't, and take away the entire opportunity, which I don't think is fair. I think if we're already managing the wrongdoers, we should just continue going forward. And ultimately, again, when we first talked about this, people that are committed are going to be interested and are going to do this. And the ones who thought they were committed and haven't been successful, the town has already acted, and there's been action taken and removal of coops. So I feel like it's been a success. And like I said, I know people in the ward off West Bronx area, that's Councillor Toniel's area, they're quite happy with theirs. They don't have any complaints. They have actually neighbors engaging in this healthy experience, I guess you could say, with neighborly kids partaking in the sharing of chores and the interest of it in the education, with everyone being at home with COVID. It's just offering a whole new other opportunity. But anyway, those are, I guess, just more so my comments.
All right, thank you, Councilor Jobin. Deputy Mayor Buchetti.
Thank you, Mayor. Just again to go by with Councillor Dye was saying, in terms of enforcement, I did receive a few phone calls from people in the urban area that are saying that the chicken coops are not to standard. So I don't know if the bylaw, maybe Madam Clerk, if you can, review that. Is that in the policy where they have to have a certain standard for a chicken coop? Some are using just like a backyard, decrepit garage, a 10 by 10, and it's openings, and they've got like a little door to have the hens go back in, and so that to me is not a standard that we want, correct? So is there a standard that they have to abide by to have a chicken coop?
Through you, your worship, in response to the deputy mayor, yes, the policy and the terms and conditions do set out certain specifications for the coop. They do have to submit the information with their application and the details with regards to the coop design or drawings. And the coop is also inspected by our building services department before the license or the tags are issued for the hens as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question through to the clerk. Maybe if Smoy, if you might be able to share what the enforcement process is, how many complaints have to come in before the issue is addressed, and what the severity of the complaint ought to be.
I don't know if it's necessarily a number of complaints, but where we have had complaints with regards to chickens running at large, we have immediately contacted the chicken owner to make them aware that their chickens were loose, and they acted immediately in that case. There was a case where one of the property owners was a misinterpretation, if you will, of what the hours within which the chickens could be in the run. So they were literally running around in their backyard, not kept in the chicken run, which is part of the coop and is the caged portion. So there was that situation. And then situations where, residents are expressing concerns relative to rodents and belief that the rodents are coming from the chicken coop, et cetera. We have sent out our bylaw enforcement officer, and our bylaw enforcement officer has inspected the coops to see if in fact, there is ways or means for the rodents to get in, and is there some attraction there for the rodents, et cetera. So he does go out, he takes a number of photos, he has spoken to the property owner as well as the complainant. We've been told that they've remedied In the one situation, we were told that the homeowner remedied where the rats were getting in, and while in fact it was actually the complainant themselves and other residents that were going in and taking care of the coop and where the rodents were getting in, setting traps, etc. So at that point, that's when we felt that the property owner really wasn't maintaining the coop. What we were seeing was actually the results of the neighbors, and to which the owner admitted that it wasn't them themselves. So that is when the order was issued to remove those rodents, or to remove that hen coop and the hens. And sorry, Councillor Daly has his hand up.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that particular situation. And so, I mean, I think that's a case where this is a case where a good outcome, but post inspection, it wasn't. If not for the videos and the supporting documentation, it would have passed inspection without issue. And so, this is the kind of situation that has been popping up, which I'm hopeful that the new enforcement measures will tighten so that the issues as they're reported are addressed, and it's not really the ward councillor trying to push for a resolution on it, and that the system itself takes care of those issues.
Any further questions or sort of comments? I think that's the biggest piece. If we go back a year ago, that was I think on everybody's part was the concern of making sure, because obviously we've taken measures like to try to control the rodent population from hardcover garbage containers and so forth, and make sure your yards are cleaned up. And it's food, that's what attracts them is habitat and certainly the food stuff and that. So I'd be curious as well. That's why I asked in terms of the calls, and then whatever complaints that were there, and obviously you're registering them. And my concern as well is the severity of it in terms of the complaints, obviously the neighbors and so forth. So there is, I would think, the severity of the calls and so forth, and the amount, I think once the report in a year's time that comes forward would be great to have that additional information in terms of the volume, certainly of complaints. Yep, go ahead.
So thank you, Your Worship. It would be very helpful if, if council members are receiving these complaints with regards to the hens, and to the earlier point I think made at another meeting with regards to rodents, if you could please encourage the constituents to contact us either administratively via telephone that we can log into City Works, or through our online system, so that we can log in those service requests or those concerns, and to be able to, for administration to be able to study what those concerns are, in order that we can provide you the best information possible when we return with the subsequent report on this pilot project.
Yeah, and certainly I think our inspectors can find a dividing line of what is frivolous and what is actual certain complaints, because obviously we need to find certainly the balance on this particular bylaw. Any further questions or certainly comments? If not, then the motion would be that it's entitled Urban Hands Licensing Pilot Program Interim Update be received, and that bylaw 2020-14 authorizing urban hen licensing pilot program be amended for the remaining pilot period in effect until April 30th, 2022, and further that the amended bylaw be considered at the next regular council meeting. What's the pleasure of council? Councillor Houston, move the recommendation, and Councillor Tonio support. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, this The second report is from it's our municipal alcohol risk management policy. And I believe who's going to bring that forward? Paul? Mr. Anthony?
Yes, good evening, Mayor McNamara, members of council, and I also have Carrie Rice with me this evening. If there's any questions that I'm not be able to respond to, that Carrie certainly will have the answers to. So the first policy we have on tonight in front of council is an update to the municipal alcohol policy. This is a lot of housekeeping. As the council is aware, the alcohol policy or the regulations through the government change from time to time. And in 2019, the government of Ontario made some amendments to the Liquor License Act. It was in response to that some of these changes have been made. We want to ensure that our municipal alcohol policy ensures that we will comply with the provincial regulations while enduring to manage the town's risk and liability, and making sure that when anybody's using liquor in one of our town facilities, that the policy promotes and is responsible rental of the town facilities for these community events, and also ensures that the renters know what policies and procedures they are to follow. So a couple of the big changes to the policy, which I will highlight to you. Obviously, there were some changes in the hours of the sale of alcohol, advertising requirements for alcohol, the serving sizes, and the special occasion permits, requirements for boundaries of the permit area, and the addition of tailgate event SOP. And as you'll all recall, that came in a few years ago, and that was basically for professional sports or the OHL for tailgate parties. One of the areas we looked at when we were updating the policy, as well as in the past policies, we had 3 locations that administration could undertake an application and approve, and that was the Tecumseh Recreation Complex and Arena. It was the St. Clair Beach Community Center and the Tecumseh Golden Age Clubs. Those were 3 facilities within the community that we allowed alcohol to go, and we did not have to come back to council for a report requesting the ability to sell alcohol in those areas. Over the years, I know council has come to administration a couple times about streamlining the reports that come to council. And there's 3 main parks that usually have a request for alcohol service with their events. That's obviously Lakewood Park, Lacoste Park, and McAuliffe Park. So we've added those to the list so that administration then, as long as the events have had a prior experience and they've met all of our expectations and they don't have any liquor violations to them, that we could go through that process and we would be able to grant them authority to have their event and have alcohol there as long as they met the conditions of the alcohol policy. That doesn't preclude from any other park being able to have a request, but those requests are usually very minimum and one-offs, and we would still continue to come to council for authorization, excuse me, to award that alcohol policy. Policy also changed, and it clearly identified events, private events, public events, and tailgate events, and municipal significant events. The big change here was obviously the tailgate, which again was the one that was added. Outside of that, we've also had an opportunity through the clerk's office to review the updated policy with our municipal insurer. And they had made some recommendations, which we did address in the actual policy, which is applied. So if there's any questions from council, certainly Carrie and I can answer those questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions or certain comments? Yes, Councilor Jobin.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Anthony. So the tailgating event thing, I'm trying to understand. All my kids play hockey. Is that in reference to, so if there is a hockey tournament and some parents are in the parking lot, if they have a permit, they could be consuming in a certain area, or is it based upon tailgating on your private lands? I just need some clarification on that.
So the alcohol policy changed and it did allow tailgating, but you're correct, it's in a specific area. So it was more designed for, you've always heard of the Lions and the professional teams having tailgate parties. So the policy was amended so that those professional teams in the province of Ontario could do that. So places such as the Argonauts, the Leafs in the square. We at St. Clair College could have that because they were a professional baseball team in the summer. And outside of that, it's not meant for the everyday hockey party to go and, set up a tailgating party in the parking lot. It's meant for more of a controlled, for an event atmosphere, like a one-time, an event, like a sporting event that you're there once, not continuous over a weekend like a hockey tournament would be for youth adult.
That would be like, for example, what we had a few years ago when we had the car, when we had all the recreational hockey, the world championships in our area. It's basically geared to adults, I'd surmise, because if Carha was to come back here, I'm sure that they'd be asking for tailgating.
Actually, what it would, Mayor McNamara, what it would refer to, we would still probably have to have a tent because of the issue of the amount of times they're coming and going. And so the tailgating would be very difficult in that sense. I also believe, and Carrie maybe can correct me on the policy, I think you're allowed in those instances, you can bring your own alcohol, but as long as you're in that controlled area, I believe that's why it was really restricted to certain levels of professional where they could have control over it as well, because it is still the responsibility of the facility holder to ensure that all of the appropriate liquor laws are followed.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe to both either Paul or Carrie too, that doesn't allow the rec hockey. I know we used to do it years ago. You always brought 2 duffel bags. You brought your equipment, and the other one was the refreshments in the dressing room. So that's still not allowed.
And I'll answer that, and then I'll refer to Carrie for some other comments on the previous. But no, that's still not allowed. And you'll see in the policy, there's no consumption of alcohol in dressing rooms, washrooms, in the stands. Only the areas that we can. If the arena ice was out, we could have the floor licensed. The lounge in between the 2 arenas, or the Horwood room, would be 3 locations within the arena. Okay. Outside of that, nothing is allowed to be licensed. And I'll turn to Carrie for a comment on the previous.
Thank you. Yes, and for clarification, first, anyone who wants to have a tailgate, they need to obtain a permit through the AGCO and qualify that way. So tailgating is not an approved activity for everyday users. They have to apply for a tailgate permit, and those to qualify for that, they have to be a professional, semi-professional, or post-secondary sport linked with a sport of that kind. So it would have to be a major league team. So examples that they've provided is it would be Canadian Football League or National Hockey League. The semi-professional would be minor league teams such as Ontario Hockey Leagues or AAA baseball, for instance. And then, of course, post-secondary would be similar to like St. Clair College. For them, if they would want to, they would have the ability to seek out those permits, but they would have to apply through the AGCO and get those authorizations first.
Thank you. Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Paul. Paul, if I understood you correctly, any alcohol-related events that we have held within the town and approved by council, if there are no issues with those events when they come back for the reoccurring years, those are events which you now have, or Parks and Rec have the delegated authority for approval, and that doesn't have to come to council. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, right? That, if we don't have any issues and we've already approved that event, if it's coming back, and the only 2 I can think of are the Taste at Tecumseh and the Rotary fish fry event that we have. I can't recall off the top of my head if we have any others, but events that happen like that every year, keep coming back to us and they have no issues, I see no issue with delegating that reapproval of those events. So I think that's a great idea.
All right, any further questions or comments to both Paul and Carrie? If not, then I need a motion that the municipal alcohol risk management policy number 31 be repealed, and that the amended municipal alcohol risk management policy number 31 as provided in the report prepared by Parks and Recreation Services be approved as the replacement policy. Councilor Dowie moves, Councilor Houston support. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that carries. All right, thank you both. Well, I think you're still on. We have the next from Parks and Recreation Services, the outdoor tennis and pickleball club operations policy.
And once again, Mayor McNamara, members of council, this is a new policy that's being introduced to the town's policy for facilities. It's not uncommon for groups and clubs in other municipalities to have a similar request as what will be coming to us later on from the Tecumseh Pickleball Association, and ensure that we are able to control the use of the facilities and ensure that the clubs and organizations that are requesting a specific slot of time to be able to use for their facility or for their club's operations, there needed to be some clearly defined policies and procedures that they would need to follow so that they can meet what the goal is. There's things in the policy such as, the number of members the club must have. They must be a member of an association, an approved Ontario association with their insurance. There's a number of factors. They must have a board of directors. They must be incorporated. The purpose of a policy such as this, and we have had consultations with some larger municipalities that have these, is again to control. So you don't have groups of 5 or 6 people calling themselves the XYZ club and we want to play tennis every morning from 7 till 8 in such and such a spot. This is to promote the healthy use of the sport, to ensure that it's able to grow. They can accommodate their members. It's good for the community. It also has written into the policy that community, or that organization is responsible to ensure that they have public time, they have tournaments which are available to members of the public, not just, their association tournaments, that they would have some open houses. Our association has been very active working with the local school boards and having schools now take part in a training and learn the game. So it's really expanded, and we are very fortunate, I believe, in Tecumseh to have an association such as the one that's certainly sprung up. They've met all the criteria. They've done a good job over the last 3 or 4 years to ensure that, they're following good faith. They're doing what we've asked of them. They're ensuring that those opportunities will be there, and this policy will move forward. So if we do in the future receive a request from a club or association, we would be able to ensure that there's a set of guidelines that they need to follow before they can even be considered for an application. And not unlike hockey and sports, there's rentals and then there's open time. The Rentals Association, will have that opportunity, but there will be plenty of open time as well. You'll see in the policy when we do bring it back from the TPC to be considered by council at a future date, that they have acknowledged the times. Shawano will always remain open for public play as well as outside of the pickleball times that have been requested for the club use. They're open for public. So outside of that, I think that's really what we wanted to put in place was that structure, so that if a group or association come in, there's certainly terms that are met that quantify that group to be able to act as an association. So we're open for any questions that council may have regarding this new policy.
Councilor Dowie, Councilor Antonio.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Mr. Anthony. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think it gives some clarity as to how different associations are recognized. I did see a reference in the policy to the assignment of hours to the organizations that are coming up. I just was hoping that you might be able to elaborate a bit as to how that distribution of hours would follow, and whether there would be if the public if public times remain available at the same time if we have multiple courts in the network.
So for an association to come forth and look for blocks of time, they look for blocks of time for their club at that time because of it's a controlled usage of play. But I can assure you, and that was part of the process we went through in this specific one. That's why Shawano Park will remain a public opportunity. The only time it will be looked at being booked would be if there would be a tournament in town that would require the additional courts above the 10 there. Also, afternoons, weekends, there's going to be plenty of open time for members of the public to come and utilize it. So there will be opportunities for the public, yes, at all times.
Councillor Tonio.
Thank you. Paul, I noticed that you have times for the tennis is 8:30 to 8:30 or vice versa. I think two different times. We have a time frame for tennis and then a time frame for pickleball. What time they open and what time they close. How come they're not the same?
Currently, right now, Councillor Tonio, through the mayor, we have two facilities that are lit tennis courts. That's why the extension of the tennis, and they can go to the parks open till 10 o'clock. Pickleball right now, currently, the new facilities will not have lights until some future date. Once that would happen, then we would look at the expansion of that as well. But that's why the difference in the times for the tennis and the pickleball.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And second question, the Optimists have their cement logo there where they used to peel the corn. And they reached out to me. I'm assuming we're going to retain that and provide it back to the Optimist or reserve it somewhere else. Is that going to be affected when we build the new pickleball courts? First question, I guess.
So to answer that question, the answer is no, it will not affect them. I did have the president, Richard, contact me the other day because same thing, he'd been contacted by a member. The proposed court is not going anywhere over top of the existing the Optimist cement pad with the marker inside it.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions or comments? Yeah, my comment is just to echo, and I'm glad that Councillor Dowie brought it up because I think it's important. I know how enthusiastic the pickleball organization is, and certainly tennis, but we have to remember youth and others that are not part of those association, that they're not excluded from some prime time during the week and other areas, because I think it's very important. Like minor hockey and the rest of them, they would take every minute you could give them of prime time and so forth. So I like the way it's been organized, and I think that it is a good solid policy, and I like that. I think it's, there's no arguments anymore. It's been decided, and to the associations and to others that are inquiring about our facilities and that, here's the policy right here, and so everybody knows going in what's required of themselves and certainly the groups that they are working with. But I like the fact that it's, I'm ABC a group, and we're coming in, we want to book the court times and so forth. This policy defines that.
And just to kind of follow up, Mayor McNamara, on your comments, and that's exactly when we went through. So currently, right now, we have 4 outdoor pickleball courts, which we're running the TPC, and we're also running regular members of the public. And yes, there's a lot of times the members of the public don't have that opportunity to get in because the TPC had booked those times. However, in the new facility, once again, we've got 10 new courts. They'll move to that facility. So which we upkeep the other one to at Shawano Park to the same standards. There'll be 4 courts always. We have the ability that we could always put in a 5th court if required. There is enough room. So there will always be that opportunity of residents to play, just if they don't want to be a part of an association, they want to go play, they will have that opportunity, as well as the outside, the confirmed times at the Lacoste facility, they will be able to play.
Yeah, that's excellent. Councillor Altenhoff?
Thank you, Worship. And through you, I appreciate your comments, and it made me think of something not perhaps necessarily associated with the policy we're considering, but is there some mechanism, perhaps an online app or anything that residents, whether they're part of an association or outside of that association, where they can determine the availability somewhat in real time, I guess, on these courts? Is something like that available, to Mr. Anthony? And if not, could we consider something like that? Because of the popularity of this sport.
Yeah, I will take a quick stab and then I'll turn it to Carrie. So the issue with that is similar to tennis right now, is the booking, and to do that, it's really difficult. I will let Carrie talk to you about the real time trying to get there. But it is very difficult. People like to play longer. If there's nobody there, they continue to play. There's a number of successes, and our tennis actually has gone very well without the booking portion of it. Come play, people get to know habits. But and I'll let Carrie respond to the remainder.
It is something that we're going to be looking at. Our recreation software system, ActiveNet, does allow online booking opportunities. So it's something that we're going to look at testing out. Right now, the Pickleball Association, they have some other software systems that they kind of prefer because it's utilized in other districts and other areas. So they're wanting to try and streamline with those systems instead. So we're having some dialogue back and forth as to what system would best work. So it is something we are looking at as that would be beneficial based on feedback that we have received. It's just trying to see which system would work best. An external system that the pickleball club members are already familiar with, or our recreation software system and the modules that we have available to us through that. So we are looking at it.
Yes, supplementary.
Yeah, thank you. Just as a quick follow-up, thank you, Your Worship. And then, no, this is great. I think it's a good thing because we know everyone will probably be having their cell phones with them or some other communication device. But even if it could tell, and I know this might be a bit challenging, but with current technology, maybe it's a lot easier to implement than I'm thinking in my mind. But even to show that something is available, and I don't mean necessarily available from a book point of view, it's just no one's using it. And, this court over here and wherever, whether it be Lacoste in the future, wherever it might be, is available. And then people will know, okay, I'll make my way over there. Just something to consider. It may, make it a bit better and obviously allow for our residents to kind of, if you will, optimize their time and getting to the specific courts. But thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
All right, any further questions or comments? Then if I could have a motion that the Outdoor Tennis and Pickleball Club Operations Policy number 91 as attached to Parks and Recreation Services Report number PRS 2020-107 be approved. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Dowie. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, unfinished business, members of council, any unfinished business? Councilor Dowie?
Thank you, Worship. Just questions of the administration. Back at our meeting of February 11th, 2020, this was council meeting. I'd asked the question about our policy on snow clearing and whether the word south side could be deleted from Riverside Drive so that both sides of the sidewalk on Riverside Drive could be cleared in the wintertime. An email exchange earlier this year, I was advised that it was still to come. So I'm checking to see if we may have a better idea of the timeline for that question, come back to the Policies and Priorities Committee.
I would prefer to defer to Mr. Bartnick. There you go. Thank you. Thank you through you, your worship, and thank you, Councillor Dowie, for the question. I think we were aiming Q3 to try and bring something back to council.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any further unfinished business? All right. Then we'll move on to any new business. No new business at this time. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. Members of council. And if there's no further business, then adjournment is certainly in order. Councillor Tonio, Councillor Altenhoff, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right. I think we are